from the sky. Our help from the cloud. Is it on? Did some delay happen? How are you?
I'm okay, you?
Okay.
It is on now?
So it has to be switched on in the server.
Oh, okay.
So it's just transmitting on the server. Then it has to go to the server, to Facebook. So, hello, my team. Anyway, I'm doing, it's like a few seconds delay before they get to see. Okay, it's on. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. Today is Thursday, the 20th December. Reading from the first canto, 8th chapter, verse 27. We will recite this. Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Sanatana Goswami. So, anyone at home, you can get it online. So, Shastra Shastrati Sarva Shastrati Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpalam Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Satmarokaika Drikpradam. A nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truth. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidvanto Ditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartika, a life heir of all the Supreme Lord's devotees. O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Patnaya Prema Vakshaksharayate Sarvanda Sarvasivyaya Sri Krishna Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madhika Bandha Matsari Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Manishtara Kamat Bhagya Madananda Namostute. My friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin atini chochataraka hanamuncha kadachin mam premahrit kantayospuram. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So welcome again to the reading. All viewers online, thank you for joining in. So just before I start, I'll just remind everyone, we had the readings of Bhagavad Gita this Tuesday. We finished reading all 700 verses within 3 hours, and we will repeat that on Sunday 8 in the morning for everyone else who couldn't attend that day because of your work or studies or any other matter. So anyone would like to join for that blissful reading? We'll start at 8 and we'll do Sanskrit. We'll go through Sanskrit and English, but we'll decide on that day if that will be possible to finish in 4 hours. Please join us also online. So text 27, if you want, there's another Bhagavatam. It's the 8th chapter named called Prayers by Queen Kunti. So we went through a few really important verses. All of the verses are important, but some are specifically stand out to be memorized, to be try to memorize at least few, if we cannot, of course, memorize all. And some more are coming now. So text 27 is one done as well. Namo Kinchana Vitaya Nirvita Guna Vritaye Atmaramaya Santaya Kaivalya Pataye Namaha. My obeisance unto you, who are the property of the materially impoverished. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material modes of nature. You are self-satisfied, and therefore you are the most gentle and are master of the monists. Purport. A living being is finished as soon as there is nothing to possess. Therefore, a living being cannot be, in the real sense of the term, a renouncer. A living being renounces something for gaining something more valuable. A student sacrifices his childish proclivities to gain better education. A servant gives up his job for a better job. Similarly, a devotee renounces the material world not for nothing, but for something tangible in spiritual value. Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, and others give up their worldly pomp and prosperity for the sake of the service of the Lord. They were big men in the worldly sense. The Goswamis were ministers in the government service of Bengal, and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami was the son of a big zamindar of his time. But they left everything to gain something superior to what they previously possessed. The devotees are generally without material prosperity, but they have a very secret treasure house in the lotus feet of the Lord. There is a nice story about Srila Sanatana Goswami. He had a touchstone, and this stone was left in a pile of refuse. A needy man took it, but later on wondered why the valuable stone was kept in such a neglected place. He therefore asked Sanatana for the most valuable thing, and then he was given the holy name of the Lord. A kinchana means one who has nothing to give materially. A factual devotee or a Mahatma does not give anything material to anyone because he has already left all material assets. He can, however, deliver the supreme asset, namely the personality of Godhead, because he is the only property of a factual devotee. The touchstone of Sanatana Goswami, which was thrown in the rubbish, was not the property of the Goswami. Otherwise, it would have not been kept in such a place. This specific example is given for neophyte devotees, just to convince them that material hankerings and spiritual advancement go ill together. Unless one is able to see everything as spiritual in relation with the Supreme Lord, one must always distinguish between spirit and matter. A spiritual master like Srila Sanatana Goswami, although personally able to see everything as spiritual, set this example for us only because we have no such spiritual vision. Advancement of material vision or material civilization is a great stumbling block for spiritual advancement. Such material advancement entangles the living being in the bondage of a material body, followed by all sorts of material miseries. Such material advancement is called anartha, or things not wanted. Actually, this is so. In the present context of material advancement, one uses lipstick at a cost of 50 cents, and there are so many unwanted things, which are all products of the material conception of life. By diverting attention to so many unwanted things, human energy is spoiled without achievement of spiritual realization, the prime necessity of human life. The attempt to reach the moon is another example of spoiling energy, because even if the moon is reached, the problems of life will not be solved. The devotees of the Lord are called akinchanas because they have practically no material assets. Such material assets are all products of the three modes of material nature. They foil spiritual energy, and thus the less we possess such products of material nature, the more we have a good chance for spiritual progress. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no direct connection with material activities. All these acts and deeds which are exhibited even in this material world are spiritual and without affection to the modes of material nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that all his acts, even his appearance and disappearance in and out of the material world, are transcendental, and one who knows this perfectly shall not take his birth again in this material world, but will go back to Godhead. The material disease is due to hankering after and lording over material nature. This hankering is due to the interaction of the three modes of nature, and neither the Lord nor the devotees have attachment for such false enjoyment. Therefore, the Lord and the devotees are called Nivritta Guna Vritti. The perfect Nivritta Guna Vritti is the Supreme Lord, because he never becomes attracted by the modes of material nature, whereas the living beings have such a tendency. Some of them are by the illusory attraction of the nature, because the devoted property of the Lord reciprocally. The devotees are certainly transcendental. That is a natural conclusion. Such unalloyed devotees are distinct from the mixed devotees of miseries and because inquisitiveness. The unalloyed devotees and the Lord are transcendently attached to one another. For others, the Lord has nothing to reciprocate, and therefore he is self-satisfied. Self-satisfied as he is the master of all monists who seek to merge in this Lord. Such monists merge within the personal effulgence of the Lord, called the Brahmajyoti, enter into the transcendental Lord, which are never to be misunderstood. Manikalamishyanam anadi nidanam vibhum sarvaramyan mitaka. My Lord, I consider your Lordship to be eternal time, the supreme control, without beginning and end, the all-pervasive one. In distributing your mercy, you are equal to everyone. The dissensions between living beings are due to social intercourse. Purport. Kunti Devi knew that Krishna was neither her nephew nor an ordinary family member of her paternal house. She knew perfectly well that Krishna is the primeval Lord who lives in everyone's heart as the Supreme Paramatma. Another name of the Paramatma feature of the Lord is Kala, time. Time is the witness of all our actions, good and bad, and thus resultant reactions are destined by him. It is no use saying that we do not know why and for what we are suffering. We may forget the deed for which we may suffer at this present moment, but we must remember that Paramatma is our constant companion, and therefore he knows everything, past, present, and future. And because the Paramatma feature of Lord Krishna destines all actions and reactions, he is the supreme controller also. Without his sanction, not a blade of grass can move. The living beings are given as much freedom as they deserve, and means that freedom is the cause of suffering. The devotees of freedom, good son of the Lord. Others who misuse freedom are put in the miseries destined by the eternal Kala. The Kala offers the conditioned souls both happiness and miseries. It is all predestined by the eternal time. As we have miseries uncalled for, so we may have happiness also without being asked, for they are all predestined by Kala. No one is therefore either an enemy or friend of the Lord. Everyone is suffering and enjoying the result of his own destiny. His destiny is made by the living beings in course of social intercourse. Everyone here wants to lord it over the material nature, and thus everyone creates his own destiny under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. He is all-pervading, and therefore he can see everyone's activities. And because the Lord has no beginning or end, he is known also as the eternal time, Kala. 29. Veda kaschit bhagavan chikyashitam tabehamanasya ninam vidambharam nayasya kaschit taitosti karishchit dveshyascha yasmin vishamamatirninam. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and so are misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are purport. The Lord's mercy upon the fallen souls is equally distributed. He has no one as the specific object of hostility. The very conception of the personality of Godhead as a human being is misleading. His pastimes appear to be exactly like human beings, but actually they are transcendental and without any tinge of material contamination. He is undoubtedly partial to his pure devotees, but in fact, as much as the sun is never partial to anyone. By using the sun rays, sometimes even the stones become valuable, whereas a blind man cannot see the sun, although there are enough sun rays before him. Darkness and light are two opposite conceptions, but this does not mean that the sun is partial in distributing its rays. The sun rays are open to everyone, but the capacities of the receptacles that differ. Foolish people think that devotional service is flattering the Lord to get special mercy. Actually, the pure devotees who are engaged in the transcendental love of the Lord are not a mercantile community. A mercantile house renders service to someone in exchange for values. The pure devotee does not service for him. Suffering men, needy men, inquisitive persons, or philosophers make temporary connections with the Lord to serve a particular purpose. When the purpose is served, there is no more relation with the Lord. A suffering man, if he is pious at all, prays the Lord for his recovery. But as soon as the recovery is over, in most cases, the suffering man no longer cares to keep any connection with the Lord. The mercy of the Lord is open for him, but he is reluctant to receive it. That is the difference between a pure devotee and a mixed devotee. Those who are completely against the service of the Lord are considered to be in abject darkness. Those who ask for the Lord's favor only at time of necessity are partial recipients of the mercy of the Lord, and those who are 100% engaged in the service of the Lord are full recipients of the mercy of the Lord. Such partiality in receiving the Lord's mercy is relative to the recipient, and it is not due to the partiality of the all-merciful Lord. When the Lord descends on this material world by his own merciful energy, he plays like a human being, and therefore it appears that the Lord is partial to his devotees only, but that is not a fact. Despite such apparent manifestation of partiality, his mercy is equally distributed. In the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all persons who died in a fight before the presence of the Lord got salvation without the necessary qualification, because death before the presence of the Lord purifies the passing soul from sins, and therefore the dying gets a place somewhere in the mental abode. Somehow or other, if someone puts himself open in the sun rays, he is sure to get the requisite benefit both by heat and by ultraviolet rays. Therefore the conclusion is to think of him as partial. 30. Janma karma cha vishvatman ajasya kartum atmanam tiryan nishishu yanashu tat adyanta vidambanam. Of course it is bewildering for the soul of the universe. You work, though you are inactive, and that you take birth, though you are the vital force and the unborn. You yourself descend amongst animals, men, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is bewildering. Purport. Mental powers of the Lord are not only bewildering, but also apparently contradictory. In other words, they are all inconceivable to our thinking existence, and yet he appears in the form of a boar amongst animals, in a Krishna, etc., in the form of a rishi like Narayana, in the form of aquatic like a fish. Yet it is said in the Shruti mantra that the Supreme Brahman perfectly by automatic knowledge, strength and activity. All these statements prove without any question that the Lord's activities, forms and deeds are all limited in power, and because he is inconceivably powerful, everything is possible in him. Therefore, no one can calculate him exactly. Every action of the Lord is bewildering to the common man. He cannot be understood by the Vedic knowledge, but he can be easily understood by the pure devotees, because they are intimately related to him. The devotees therefore know that although he appears amongst the animals, he is not an animal, nor a man, nor a rishi, nor a fish. He is eternally the Supreme Lord in all circumstances. Yashoda took a rope to bind you when you committed an offense, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears, which washed the mascara from your eyes. And we were afraid, though fear personified is afraid. This sight is bewildering to me. Purport. Here's another explanation of the bewilderment created by the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme in all circumstances, as already explained. Here is a specific example of the Lord's being the Supreme and at the same time plaything in the presence of his pure devotee. The Lord's pure devotee renders service unto the Lord out of unalloyed love only, and while discharging such a service, the pure devotee forgets the position of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord also accepts the loving service of his devotees more relishingly when the service is rendered spontaneously out of pure affection, without anything of reverential admiration. Generally, the Lord is worshipped by the devotees in a reverential attitude, but the Lord is meticulously pleased when a devotee, out of pure affection and love, considers the Lord to be less important than himself. The Lord's pastimes in the original abode of Goloka Vrindavan are exchanged in that spirit. The friends of Krishna consider him one of them. They do not consider him of reverential importance. The parents of the Lord, who are all pure devotees, consider him a child only. The Lord accepts the chastisements of the parents more cheerfully than the prayers of the Vedic hymns. Similarly, he accepts the reproaches of his fiancés more palatably than the Vedic hymns. When Lord Krishna was present in this material world to manifest his eternal pastimes of the transcendental realm of the Loka Vrindavan as an attraction for the people in general, he displayed a unique picture of subordination before his foster mother, Yashoda. The Lord, in his naturally childish, playful activities, used to spoil the stock butter of Mother Yashoda by breaking the pots and distributing the contents to his friends and playmates, including the celebrated monkeys of Vrindavan, who took advantage of the Lord's munificence. Mother Yashoda saw this, and after her pure love, she wanted to make a show of punishment for her transcendental child. She took a rope and threatened the Lord that she, as is generally done in the ordinary household. Seeing the rope in the hands of Mother Yashoda, the Lord bowed down his head and began to weep, just like a child, and tears rolled down his cheeks, washing off the black ointment smeared about his beautiful eyes. This picture of the Lord is adored by Kunti Devi because she is conscious of the Lord's supreme position. He is feared often by fear personified, yet he is afraid of his mother, who wanted to punish him just in an ordinary manner. Kunti was conscious of the exalted position of Krishna, whereas Yashoda was not. Therefore, Yashoda's position was more exalted than Kunti's. Mother Yashoda got the Lord as her child, and the Lord made her forget altogether that her child was the Lord himself. If Mother Yashoda had been conscious of the exalted position of the Lord, she would certainly have hesitated to punish the Lord. But she was made to forget this situation. The Lord wanted to make a complete of childishness because of the affection of Yashoda. This exchange of love between the mother and the son was a natural way, and Kunti, remembering the scene, was bewildered, and she could do nothing but the transcendental filial love. Indirectly, Mother Yashoda is prayed for her to control even the all-powerful Lord as her beloved child. Since these verses are still, we can recite this. Kechit ahura chamjatam rasa kirtaye yado priyasyan vaya yado priyasyan vaye maladanam malayasyiva chandanam. Some say that the unborn is born of pious kings, and others say that he is born to please King Yadu, one of your dearest devotees. You appear in his family as sandalwood appears in the Malaya hills. Purport. Because Because the Lord's appearance in this material world is bewildering, there are different opinions about the birth of the unborn. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he takes his birth in the material world, although he is the Lord of all creations and he is unborn. So there cannot be any denial of the birth of the unborn, because he himself establishes the truth. But still, there are different opinions as to why he takes his birth. That is also declared in the Bhagavad Gita. He appears by his own internal potency to re-establish the principles of religion and to protect the pious and to annihilate the impious. That is the mission of the appearance of the unborn. Still, it is said that the Lord is there to glorify the pious King Yudhishthira. Lord Shri Krishna certainly wanted to establish the kingdom of the Pandavas for the good of all in the world. When there is a pious king ruling over the world, the people are happy. When the ruler is impious, the people are unhappy. In the age of Kali, in most cases, the rulers are impious and are also continuous. But in the case of democracy, the impious citizens themselves elect their representative to rule over them, and therefore they cannot blame anyone for their unhappiness. Maharaj Nala was also celebrated as a great pious king, but he had no connection with Lord Krishna. Therefore, Maharaj Krishna is meant here to glorify the Lord. The Lord had already glorified King Yadav in his family. Although he is known as Yadava, Yaduvira, Yadunandana, etc., he is always independent of such obligation. He is just like the sandalwood that grows in the Malaya hills. Trees can grow anywhere and everywhere, yet because the sandalwood trees grows mostly in the area of the Malaya hills, the name sandalwood and the Malaya are interrelated. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Lord is ever unborn like the sun, and yet he appears as the sun rises on the eastern horizon. As the sun is never the sun of the eastern horizon, so the Lord is no one's son, but he is the father of everything that be. 33. Apare vasudevasya devakyam yachito vyagat ajasptam asya kshemaya vadaya cha surajisham. Others say that since both Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken your birth as their son. Undoubtedly, you are unborn, yet you take your birth for their welfare and to kill those who are envious of the demigods. Purport. It is also said that Vasudeva and Devaki, in their previous birth as Sutapa and Prishni, underwent a severe type of penance to get the Lord as their son. And as a result of such austerities, the Lord appeared as their son. It is already declared in the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord appears for the welfare of all people of the world and to vanquish the asuras, or the materialistic atheist. 34. Paravataranaayami bhuvanava ivodadam siddhantya bhuri varena jato hyatma bhuvartita. Others say that the world, being overburdened like a boat at the sea, is much aggrieved, and that Brahma, who is your son, prays to you, and so you have appeared to diminish the trouble. Purport. Brahma, or the first living being, born just after the creation, is the direct son of Narayana. Narayana, as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, first of all entered the material universe. Without spiritual contact, matter cannot create. This principle was followed from the very beginning of the creation. The Supreme Spirit entered the universe, and the first living being, Brahma, was born on a lotus flower grown out of the transcendental abdomen of Vishnu. Vishnu is therefore known as Padmanabha. Brahma is known as Atmavu because he was begotten directly from the Father without any contact of Mother Lakshmiji. Lakshmiji was present near Narayana, engaged in the service of the Lord, and still without contact with Lakshmiji, Narayana begot Brahma. That is the omnipotency of the Lord. One who foolishly considers Narayana like other living beings should take a lesson from this. Narayana is not an ordinary being. He is the personality of Godhead himself, part of his transcendental body. An ordinary living being begets a child, and he has no means to beget a child other than the one designed for him. But Narayana, being omnipotent, is not bound to any condition of energy. He is complete and independent to do anything and everything by his various potencies, very easily and perfectly. Brahma is therefore directly the son of the Father and was not put into the womb of man. Therefore he is known as Atmavu. This Brahma is in charge of further creations in the universe, secondarily reflected by the potency of the Omnipotent. Within the halo of the universe there is a transcendental planet known as Shvetadvip, which is the abode of the Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Lord. Whenever there is a trouble in the universe that cannot be solved by the administrative demigods, they approach Brahmaji for a solution. And if it's not to be solved even by Brahmaji, then Brahmaji consults and prays to the Kshirodakashaya Vishnu for an incarnation and solution to the problems. Such a problem arose when Kamsa and others were ruling over the earth, and the earth became too much overburdened by the misdeeds of the Asuras. Brahmaji, along with other demigods, pressed the shore of the Kshirodaka ocean, and they were advised of the descent of Krishna as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. So some people say that the Lord appeared because of the prayers of Brahmaji. 35. Bhaveksmin krikshamananam avidya kama kamadihi shravana smaranahi shravana smaranarani karisham iti kechana. Others say that you appear to rejuvenate the devotional service of hearing, remembering, worshipping, and so on, in order that the conditions of pangs might take advantage and gain liberation. Purport. In the Srimad Bhagavatam Gita, the Lord asserts that he appears in every millennium just to re-establish the way of religion. The way of religion is made by the Supreme Lord. No one can manufacture a new path of religion, as is the fashion for certain ambitious persons. The factual way of religion is to accept the Lord as the supreme authority, and thus render service unto him in spontaneous love. A living being cannot help but render service, because he is constitutionally made for that purpose. The only function of the living being is to render service to the Lord. The Lord is great, and living beings are subordinate to him. Therefore, the duty of the living being is just to serve him only. Unfortunately, delusioned living beings, out of misunderstanding only, become servants of the senses by material desire. This desire is called avidya, or nescience. And out of such desire, the living being makes different plans for material enjoyment, centered about the perverted sex life. He therefore becomes in the chain of birth and death by transmigrating into different bodies on different planets under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Unless, therefore, one is beyond the boundary of this nescience, one cannot get free from the threefold miseries of material life. That is the law of nature. The Lord, however, out of his causeless mercy, because he is more merciful to the suffering living beings than they can expect, appears before them and renovates the principles of devotional service comprised of hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, praying, cooperating, and surrendering unto him. Adoption of all the above-mentioned items, or any one of them, can help a conditioned soul get out of the tangle of nescience and thus become liberated from all material sufferings created by the living being, illusioned by the external energy. This particular type of mercy is bestowed upon the living being by the Lord in the form of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Over to John. Thank you.
Hari Hari.
Hari Hari, text 36.
36. Okay.
From the book.
Yeah, that's fine. What do I do with the this gear when it's finished?
I have camera crew remotely operating, so Sirumi will switch it off.
I understand, but can't just leave it there.
Oh no, please don't. I'll come upstairs.
Okay.
Or just put it in your pocket.
Okay.
Better.
I better get some grub before it's all gone.
Yeah, I'll leave me now.
Should I save one for you?
Okay, yeah.
Save one, whatever is
Yeah. What's on the right, maybe?
on the right.
Yeah.
You mean salads?
Get them, no, they're not microwaved. They need it.
Okay.
There is none there. It's all been pretty much.
But the best you can do.
Just keep the box. It's practically gone. Yeah, it takes 36. Remember when you keep checking.
Today.
People listening in online, because I don't see anyone here except
What's up?
today with us.
I mess him. So someone's watching.
What's he saying?
Srimad. WhatsApp on his WhatsApp.
So on the text 36, 20 minutes or so. Okay. So text 36, translation. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. Purport. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna cannot be seen by our present conditional vision. In order to see him, one has to change his present vision by developing a different condition of life, full of spontaneous love of Godhead. When Sri Krishna was personally present on the face of the globe, not everyone could see him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Materialists like Ravan, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, Jarasandha and Shishupal were highly qualified personalities by acquisition of material assets. But they were unable to appreciate the presence of the Lord. Therefore, even though the Lord may be present before our eyes, it is not possible to see the necessary vision. This necessary qualification is developed by the process of devotional service only, beginning with hearing about the Lord from the right sources. The Bhagavad Gita is one of the popular literatures which are generally heard, chanted, repeated, etc. by the people in general. But in spite of such hearing, etc., sometimes it is experienced that the performer of such devotional service does not see the Lord eye to eye. The reason is that the first item, Shravana, is very important. If hearing is from the right sources, it acts very quickly. Generally, people hear from unauthorized persons. Such unauthorized persons may be very learned by academic quality. But because they do not follow the principles of devotional service, hearing from them becomes a sheer waste of time. Sometimes the texts are interpreted fashionably to suit their own purposes. Therefore, first one should select a competent and bona fide speaker, and then hear from him. When the hearing process is perfect and complete, the other processes become automatically perfect in their own way. There are different transcendental activities of the Lord, and each and every one of them is competent to bestow the desired result, provided the hearing process is perfect. In the Bhagavatam, the activities of the Lord begin from his dealings with the Pandavas. There are many other pastimes of the Lord in connection with his dealings with the Asuras and others. And in the 10th canto, the sublime dealings with his conjugal associates, the gopis, as well as with his married wives at Dwarka, are mentioned. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no difference in the transcendental nature of each and every dealing of the Lord. But sometimes people, in an unauthorized hearing process, take more interest in hearing about his dealings with the gopis. Such an inclination indicates the lusty feelings of their heart. So a bona fide speaker of the dealings of the Lord never indulges in such hearings. One must hear about the Lord from the very beginning, as in Srimad, Bhagavatam, or any other scriptures, and that will help the hearer attain perfection by progressive development. One should not therefore consider that his dealings with the Pandavas are less important than his dealings with the Gopis. You must always remember that the Lord is always transcendental to all mundane attachment, in all the above mentioned dealings with the Lord in all circumstances. And hearing about him or about his devotees or combatants is conducive to spiritual life. It is said that the Vedas and Puranas, etc., are all made to revive our lost relation with him. Hearing of all these scriptures is essential. Text 37. O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today, though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us, now when all kings are at enmity with us? Purport. The Pandavas are most fortunate because, with all good luck, they were entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. In the material world, to be dependent on the mercy is the utmost sign of misfortune. Relation. It is the most fortunate case when we can live completely dependent on Him. The material disease is due to thinking of becoming independent of everything. But the cruel material nature does not allow us to become independent. The false attempt to become independent of the stringent laws of nature is known as material advancement of experimental knowledge. The whole material world is moving on its false attempt of becoming independent of the laws of nature. Beginning from Ravan, who wanted to prepare a direct staircase to the planets of heaven, down to the present age, they are trying to overcome their existence by electronic mechanical power. But the highest goal of human civilization is to work hard with the Lord, completely dependent. The highest achievement of perfection, of perfect civilization, at the same time depend completely on the Lord. The Pandavas were the ideal executors of the standard of civilization. Undoubtedly, they were completely on the good, not idle parasites of the Lord. They were all both by personal character. Still, they always looked for the grace of the Lord because they knew that every living being is dependent. The perfection of life is, therefore, to become dependent on the will of the Lord, instead of becoming falsely independent in the material world. Those who are called anatta, or without any guardian, whereas those who are completely dependent on the will of the Lord are called sanatta, or those having someone to protect. Therefore, we must to be sanata, so that we can from the condition of material existence. The power of the material nature, the material condition of life, is the most undesirable complexity. The Bhagavad Gita therefore directs us, 7:19, that after many, many births, one fortunate person becomes aware of the fact that Vasudeva is all in all, and that the best way of leading one's life is to surrender unto Him completely. That is the sign of a Mahatma. All the members of the Pandava family were Mahatmas in household life. Maharaj Yudhishthira was the head of these Mahatmas, and Queen Kunti Devi was the mother. The lessons of the Bhagavad Gita and all the Puranas, specifically the Bhagavad Purana, are therefore inevitably connected with the history of the Pandava Mahatmas. For them, separation from the Lord was like a fish from water. Srimad Kunti Devi therefore felt such separation like a thunderbolt, and the whole prayer of the Queen is to try to persuade her to stay with them. After the battle of Kurukshetra, although the inimical kings were killed, their sons and grandsons were still there with the Pandavas. It is not only the Pandavas who are put into the condition of enmity, but all of us are always in such a condition. and the best way of living is to become completely dependent on the will of the Lord, and thereby overcome all difficulties of material existence.
He read the Sanskrit.
Sorry?
He was reading the Sanskrit as well.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Of all of them?
Yeah, just when it says text bit, you know, the Sanskrit bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can read the Sanskrit, no problem. Okay, and then it's text 38. Kevayam nama rupabhyam yadubi sahabandavaha bhavato bari rishikanam iveshito. Translation. As the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit, similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and Yadus, will end at once. Purport. Kunti Devi is quite aware that the existence of the Pandavas is due to Sri Krishna only. The Pandavas are undoubtedly well established in name and fame, and are guided by the great King Yudhishthira, who is morality personified. And the Yadus are undoubtedly great allies. But without the guidance of Lord Krishna, all of them are non-entities, as much as the senses of the body are useless without the guidance of consciousness. No one should be proud of his prestige, power and fame without being guided by the favour of the Supreme Lord. The living beings are always dependent, and the ultimate dependable object is the Lord Himself. We may therefore invent, by our advancement of material knowledge, all sorts of counteracting material resources. But without being guided by the Lord, all such inventions end in fiasco, however strong and stout the reactionary elements may be. Text 39. Neyam shobhishyate tatra yate tarim kadadhara atparer ankita pati svakshana vilakshitani. Translation. O Gadadhar, Krishna, our kingdom is now being marked by the impressions of your feet, and therefore it appears beautiful, but when you leave, it will no longer be so. Purport. There are certain particular marks on the feet of the Lord which distinguish the Lord from others. The marks of a flag, thunderbolt, an instrument to drive an elephant, umbrella, lotus, disc, etc., are on the bottom of the Lord's feet. These marks are impressed upon the soft dust of the land where the Lord traverses. The land of Hastinapur was thus marked while Lord Sri Krishna was there with the Pandavas, and the kingdom of the Pandavas thus flourished by such auspicious signs. Kunti Devi pointed out these distinguished features and was afraid of ill luck in the absence of the Lord. Text 40. Ime jana parash Shridha Subhagva Shadi Virudha Vanadrinad Vyudan Vanto Yedante Dava Vikshitahi. Translation. All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects, because the herbs and grains are in abundance, the trees are full of fruits, the rivers are flowing, the hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. Human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts, and not by gigantic industrial enterprises. The gigantic industrial enterprises are products of a godless civilization, and they cause the destruction of the noble aims of human life. The more we go on increasing such troublesome industries to squeeze out the vital energy, the more there will be unrest and dissatisfaction of the people in but few only can live lavishly by exploitation. The natural gifts such as grains and vegetables, fruits, rivers, the hills of jewels and minerals, and the seas full of pearls are supplied by the order of the Supreme, and as He desires. Material nature restricts them at times. The natural law is that the human being may take advantage of these godly gifts by nature and satisfactorily flourish on them without being captivated by the exploitive motive of lording it over material nature. The more we attempt to exploit material nature according to our whims of enjoyment, the more we shall become entrapped by the reaction of such exploitive attempts. If we have sufficient grains, fruits, vegetables and herbs, then what is the necessity of running a slaughterhouse and killing poor animals? A man need not kill an animal if he has sufficient grains and vegetables to eat. The flow of river waters fertilizes the fields, and there is more than we need. Minerals are produced in the hills, and the jewels in the ocean. If the human civilization has sufficient grains, minerals, jewels, water, milk, etc., then why should it hanker after terrible industrial enterprises at the cost of the labour of some unfortunate men? These natural gifts are dependent on the mercy of the Lord. What we need, therefore, is to be obedient to the laws of the Lord and achieve the perfection of human life by devotional service. The indications by Kunti Devi are just to the point. She desires mercy be bestowed upon them so that natural prosperity be maintained with grace. Text 41. Ata Vishvesha Vishvatman Vishmurte Svakeshume Sneha Pasham Imam Chindi Dridham Panshu Rishnishu. Translation. Soul of the universe, O personality of the form of the universe, please therefore sever my tie of affection from my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord is ashamed to ask anything in self-interest from the Lord. But the householders are sometimes obliged to ask favours from the Lord, being bound by the tie of family affection. Srimad Kunti Devi was conscious of this fact, and therefore she prayed to the Lord to cut off the affectionate tie from her own kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. The Pandavas are her own sons, and the Vrishnis are the members of her paternal family. Krishna was equally related to both the families. Both the families required the Lord's help, because both were dependent devotees of the Lord. Srimati Kunti Devi wished Sri Krishna to remain with her sons, the Pandavas, but by his doing so, her paternal house would be bereft of the benefit. But by his doing so, her paternal, all these partialities troubled the mind of Kunti, and therefore she had desired to cut off the affectionate tie. A pure devotee cuts off the limited ties of affection for his family and widens his activities in service for all forgotten souls. A typical example is the band of 6 Goswamis who followed the path of Lord Chaitanya. All of them belong to the most enlightened and cultured rich families of the higher castes. But for the benefit of the mass of population, they left their comfortable homes and became mendicants. To cut off all family affection means to broaden the field of activities. Without doing this, no one can be qualified as a Brahmin, a king, a public leader, or devotee of the Lord. Sri Ramachandra cut off the tie of affection for his beloved wife to manifest the qualities of an ideal king. Such personalities as a Brahmin, a devotee, a king, or a public leader must be very broad-minded in discharging their respective duties. Srimati Kunti Devi was conscious of this fact, and being weak, she prayed to be freed from such bondage of a family affection. The Lord is addressed as the The Lord is addressed as the Lord of the universe, or the Lord of the universal mind, indicating his all-powerful ability to cut the hard knot of family affection. Therefore, it is sometimes experienced that the Lord, out of his special affinity towards a weak devotee, breaks the family affection by force of circumstances arranged by his all-powerful energy. By doing so, he causes the devotee to become completely dependent on him, and thus clears the path of his coming back to Godhead. Okay. 6:30 now?
7, yeah.
Or 7. Okay. So, we leave it at text 42 for tomorrow. And thank you everybody for joining us. We'll be here at 6:30 tomorrow, and what's that then? Srimad Bhagavatam key.
Hey.
Jai.